Welcome, Star Wars fans, to episode 142 of Tatooine Sons. It's a new year with a new era beginning for Star Wars. The High Republic is officially here with the release tomorrow of Light of the Jedi by Charles Soule.
Can't wait.
Really?
Sorry, seriously, we'll talk about it in a minute.
We're very excited, like Dad, to explore some of the questions for this new beginning with the amazing Dan Zehr of Coffee with Kenobi.
The best of the best.
Yeah,
to start 2021.
How did we get him?
Yeah, you know what? It's just
twice. This is the second time.
Yeah.
How did we were able to pull that off?
It's awesome.
It's also a new era for Tatooine Sons as we shift to a year-long conversation about the Star Wars saga. January, we're talking about the Phantom Menace.
It's working!
It's time for Tatooine Sons.
It's true. All of it.
What is the name of the porg on the Millennium Falcon?
Force is strong in my family.
What do you think his name is? It's a big moment.
I am a Jedi, like my father before me.
Maybe Turbis?
Do or do not. There is no try.
Turbis? Pablo, if you're listening to this live stream, that porg's name is now Turbis. It's a good Star Wars name.
We're not done yet.
These guys recorded an awesome podcast called Tatooine Sons. Everybody listen to it.
Welcome, Star Wars fans. This is Tatooine Sons, your wiki look at all things Star Wars from the unique perspective of a father sharing his love for the amazing space fantasy saga with his two sons. I'm BB Nate, and I'm joined first by my brother, Samuel the Hutt.
Shoot to Star Wars fans, thanks for tuning in. And if you're not a Star Wars fan, then you should still go check out Coffee with Kenobi because it's probably the best Star Wars podcast out there.
It's the one that started it for me. I've said this
Really?
before, but that's the first Star Wars podcast I listened to. I kind of wondered what it was all about. Like, it's sort of got this NPR, like National Public Radio feel to it, which I'm not a big, you guys haven't known. The Sons are literally staring at me like, what the heck is NPR? It's, you know, PBS on television?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's PBS for radio. National Public Radio. And so it kind of had this, you know, and there's actually Saturday Night Live skits about NPR and stuff like that, and they talk like this, and it's just a really, you know, highbrow. And so when you first listen to Coffee with Kenobi, it's kind of that because they've got like, they're so smart. That's the problem. Everybody on that. That's why Dan has never asked any of us to be a part of this. I know people that get on that show, and I'm like, yeah, I'm not smart enough to do this. There's no way Dad's going to ask us to be on the show. We'll just go ahead and say it. We'd love to have an opportunity to be on his show, or one of us to be on his show.
But we completely understand why you wouldn't give us an invitation.
He'll invite me because I'm the smartest.
Well, you're the only
right,
one
that's
in the podcast world that's actually named a Star Wars character. So
That's true.
That's also true.
It is fun. So, yeah, very, very cool. Very excited to have him on. Or did we forget like my whole part?
Well, you just kept talking.
Oh, okay. So you
and
can
of
go.
course, you can't have Star Wars without bizarre father figures that continue talking, even though I'm supposed to do an intro. Here's my dad, the bow tie Jedi guy.
Bizarre. How bizarre. How bizarre. Do you guys know that like old? I think it was in 80s or 90s.
I think
And you're just pulling out all the
it's a new
dinosaurs.
year, right? Let's have some fun.
Yeah.
With this, we got to go to Savi's workshop.
Yeah.
So and by that we mean like building the whole lightsabers
Right.
and experiencing that. I want to get your guys' just real quick review of this because I know we've got. I put Facebook or Twitter. I Twittered.
You
God, I'm feeling
You're
old.
so old right
I know,
now.
Hold on, I got to get some like. I don't know what to do. We'll do this one. Oh, it didn't work. Never mind. Yeah. Anyway, so sound effects aren't working right now.
This is why we're not on Coffee with Kenobi.
This is why we're not.
We wouldn't be
on
having sound
Coffee
effects on there, though.
with Kenobi. So, I have no idea what we were just talking about. Oh, I forgot. I had here's what I'll use to save the day. All right.
Okay.
I had the mute button pressed on our sound effects.
Wow.
Thing, and so it didn't work. But
Don't get technical with me.
There we go.
There we go. I saved it. All right. So, Savi's.
And you posted something on Facebook and Twitter.
I put it out on Twitter, and I know people are have been responding to it and saying that they were going on such and such a day. Like Justin Beeman, who has been listening to our show forever, was a Patreon supporter when we did Patreon and all that. He's going to be here in 11 days, and he's super excited. I was coaching him on how to get Rise to Resistance. He's like, "Don't worry about it. I've been watching multiple YouTube videos on how to get it. I practice every morning at 7 a.m. going all the way up to submit." He's like, "I'm ready to go." I'm like, "Okay," but we got to go.
Yeah.
So, Savi's Workshop. BB Nate, what was the experience like for you?
It was immersive and intense. They definitely paid a lot of attention to what it was going to be like. I'm happy they were able to get the Screen Actors Guild clarification to get them back on there. And even though it just seems like one guy's an actor.
Yeah, I think the other two people were crew.
Three or four, actually.
Just regular cast members.
But it was really good. Really just fun.
BB, which type of lightsaber did you get?
Elemental Nature.
Yeah, that one's pretty cool. What's that? It's got a Ranker's tooth as the hilt on the
same one
pommel,
that Luke
Skywalker
fought at Jabba's.
Supposedly, that's how the legend goes.
The legend is
he said it. He's like, that Rancor tooth is the one that Luke Skywalker fought.
Really?
He said that?
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I have
very cool
a Rancor tooth from that.
Don't get cocky.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Samuel, what did you think?
Oh, I thought it was amazing. I liked how the Kembo, as that's the character name or whatever. I like how he took his time with each guest, and while we were all putting our sabers actually together, he asked questions like, why'd you choose this color crystal, or why'd you choose this style of hilt, and he had an insight about it, so he made sure it was a personal experience with everybody, and that was a lot of fun. Very immersive. You felt like you were in Star Wars. The stories and the legends behind it all were really cool. It was just a fun experience from beginning to end.
It was awesome for Mom and I, because both of us have an acting background, like theater and performance background. It's been years ago.
How would you rate the guy's acting?
It was fantastic. Here's the thing that was fun about it for us. We were kind of outside of it watching. We have our phones out and we're taking pictures and videos.
Holoscans.
And holoscans, as they call them. Yes, that's correct. Holoscans. Hold on, we got to do this one again.
Don't get technical with me.
And then you guys are actually doing it. And we didn't really want... We interacted with you some, but we didn't really want to take you out of the moment. But I was watching it, and they had lighting that was coordinated throughout.
I noticed that.
The thing. They had a soundtrack playing the entire time with music. Obviously the Force theme and just so many Star Wars themes.
And I noticed when he was going through and explaining the colors, each of the colors, and the room would change to that color. And when it went to red, it played Kylo Ren's theme and stuff.
It was awesome because they coordinated everything. And I'm standing there. The way that Mom always criticizes me for not crying at movies. Right. That's
because you say that you don't cry at fiction.
I don't cry at make believe. Right. I cried at Luke Skywalker's death, not because of the make believe, not because Luke Skywalker died, but because his story was over, and I was so connected with that character.
Right.
Over, and there was a nostalgia to that.
It's like me with Iron Man in Endgame. Right. Iron Man was my guy. That's why I cried. He was what inspired me to be an engineer and stuff.
Yeah. And so I don't cry at make believe, but I'm standing there and they're telling the story of the lightsaber, and the music is swelling and all of this, and I'm like, I go to your mom, I lean over to her, and I'm like, I'm getting freaking emotional here. It was really well done. It was so much fun. It's super expensive. I'm not going to lie.
Oh,
okay?
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It was the reason we hadn't done it before was because... for part of the time they didn't have it available, but then when they did make it available, it was like, this is going to have to be a big deal. This isn't just, they're available, so let's just jump over there and do Savi's workshop. It was it was Christmas. It was our gift to you guys for Christmas, and because it's so expensive. Having said all of that, I would highly recommend, if you come to Galaxy's Edge, obviously in Florida, and if they ever open it up in California again, it may be 2028 before you guys get to go to it in California, the way they're doing things there. No political commentary there, but literally, come on, people, can we live our lives? But anyway, having said all that, you've got to do it. If you have the opportunity, you've got to, if you're a Star Wars fan, you've got to experience
Yeah.
this.
And one of the concerns I had, not that it was a concern, I was going to do it regardless anyway, just because it's awesome. But one of the things I was a little worried about is the sabers looked, from what I had seen, they kind of looked a little cheap. Now, I haven't watched any reviews. I didn't watch an experience like a video like going through the whole experience. I wanted to go in fresh. So I knew nothing about the sabers really. I knew nothing about the experience. And I was a little worried that the sabers looked kind of cheap. They kind of looked like plastic. Like if you go to Star Tours and stuff, they have like the little, after the ride, they've got a little make your own saber, and it's a cheap little plastic toy sabers or whatever. And I was a little worried that it was going to be like that material. But you went in, and I mean, it's literal die cast.
How much do you think your guys' sabers without the blade, just the hilt, how much do you think it weighs?
Like
10 pounds?
I wouldn't go that far.
I've had
Probably-
2 comics that are 10 pounds. It wasn't as heavy.
No,
Okay.
I'd probably say 3 to 4.
Okay,
Maybe
it-
5.
I don't
mean,
know.
it's
It's pretty
It's
heavy.
hefty.
It's hefty.
It's got a weight to it. It's solid. It feels great. It looks awesome. I mean, you get a quality saber.
And not
with it,
only
too.
do you just get a hilt, but you also get the experience, the immersion, everything.
A
about
blade.
that. A blade, the kyber crystal, which you can go to Doc Ondar's or Disney Springs or something, buy more kyber crystals and switch out for any color that you want. And you also, at the end of the experience, I guess spoiler alert, because they kind of treat this as a surprise, really. But you get a sheath.
It's not that
to
big deal.
carry
Yeah,
it around.
I mean, it's cool.
everywhere.
It was you get your money's worth if you're adding into everything that you get the experience.
Yeah.
And the experience is really what
And you get a
is
pin,
special.
too.
Yeah.
A very
out of it.
high-end
Yeah,
pin.
it was a lot of fun. It was kind of a Star Wars weekend for us because
Yeah, it was.
last night. Now you guys, I don't know if you're listening to this. If you've heard about this Revenge of the Sith supercut that came out, I think it was July. I think it was 4th of July weekend or 4th of July earlier in 2020, where I can't even remember, and I should credit. Do you remember the name of the
Superhero Theorist.
Thank you, because they deserve.
I knew it was ST.
They deserve the credit.
Absolutely.
Oh my
With
gosh.
this, they put out this supercut of Revenge of the Sith with the 4 episodes of the Siege of Mandalore from the Clone Wars interspersed through it. And we had seen trailers for it back in July, and we really kind of wanted to watch it, but it didn't start till like 9 or 10 o'clock
was
at
4
night.
hours long.
And it's 4 hours long, and it was, it wasn't going to happen. And then BB Nate sent me this a couple of weeks ago that it was going to be coming back on January 2nd. So Saturday afternoon or Saturday evening at 6 p.m. I'm like, this is the right timing. So we watched it last night. I want you guys to know, if you ever get the opportunity to
He
watch
said that was gonna
this,
be the last time.
I know he said that the first time though too,
And second time.
So I'm hoping that there's an opportunity for you guys to see this. It's not something that's like downloadable because of all the legalities and
Right.
copyright stuff.
It's already. I'm surprised he didn't get kicked off of Twitch with.
Yeah, I mean,
copyright stuff.
it's bizarre that he even gets away with doing this, but it was so worth it. Samuel, tell him a little bit just about your experience watching this 4-hour supercut.
Yeah, I mean, long story short, I never want to watch Revenge of the Sith that normal way again. I mean, the way that they set it up was so well done. I was a little worried. I knew it had cuts. It had the Siege of Mandalore in there. I was a little worried that it was going to be like you'd watch a little bit of the movie and then you cut in a whole episode of Siege of Mandalore and then go back to a bit of the movie, cut in a whole new episode. No, I mean, he literally went through and cut in parts of the episodes in with the movie at good points to where towards the end we didn't feel like we were watching Clone Wars and then the movie. I mean, it just felt like one cohesive story.
I think that the most descriptive moment of that is when Anakin is with Mace Windu and some of the other Jedi, and they're having the holograms, like this hologram Ki-Adi-Mundi, hologram Yoda, and some of these people, they're all gathered in there, and they're talking about what's going on. And Mace is in Revenge of the Sith. Mace sends Anakin to go inform Palpatine that General Grievous has been killed.
Yeah.
Right. So it's that big critical moment. And then if you remember in the Clone Wars and the Siege of Mandalore, we see the next part of that conversation where
That's when
Ahsoka addresses Mace and Yoda and all this. And it's the exact same moment, just continued.
Uh-huh.
And they cut it perfectly.
It was a seamless transition.
It goes from Revenge of the Sith to animated Clone Wars without any loss of time or anything. It was perfect.
Soundtrack mixed, everything.
And that's another thing, BB Nate. You were telling me this. They created their own soundtrack around this to make it coherent, to make it fit all the way through.
They mixed some of the themes and stuff from other movies and put it into parts that they thought it would fit and everything. And it worked so well. They added deleted scenes from Revenge of the Sith.
That was true. That was neat to see.
Those were important deleted scenes.
And that's why I think he added them in. He's like, how did these get deleted if they're so...
Probably just time.
It's just sort of the birth of the rebellion. I don't know. Not important at all with this. So...
And it explains the whole "this is how liberty dies" with thunderous applause comment.
You get Mon Mothma, which we don't get in the theatrical cut. You get a lot more Bail. You get a whole lot more Padme.
It doesn't make sense when Bail just shows up towards the end.
It was really good. And then really quick, there's a post-credit scene.
Yes.
I got emotional on that one.
That was so well done.
That was awesome. So they take the post credits or the final scenes of Siege of Mandalore, Clone Wars, where
it's Empire era.
Spoiler alert!
Yeah, if you haven't seen it, but come on, seriously, where Vader comes to where the clones have been buried and Ahsoka left her saber and all of this at the end. And you see this moment where, he ignites Ahsoka's blue lightsaber and he's standing there and it was super emotional. You got the Convor, is that what it was?
Yeah,
Convor flying above, which symbolizes Ahsoka and all of that. And we even saw that in The Mandalorian in her episode. It's flying above. And then they cut to a scene from Rebels. Explain what that scene was.
So I can't remember exactly when it is, but basically Ahsoka's in the temple and she's meditating and she gets a vision from Anakin talking about
why did you leave me?
Look what I've become. And
the implication is that when Vader is standing there in the Clone Wars igniting that lightsaber, that he's actually knows now Ahsoka's alive
and is communicating.
And he's communicating with her, and that's that scene in Rebels. And it was freaking awesome.
It was so well done.
And just to wrap this up, follow superhero theorists on their social media.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because they might make this supercut, they might stream it again, but they also do other things. They've done a complete Avengers 4 movie Avengers marathon, all cut seamlessly together. Like this supercut.
Wow. They do a lot of cool stuff.
And they're working on more.
So. Bravo to you guys. That was fantastic.
Yeah, that was amazing.
With it. All right. And it's a new year for the show. So just real quick, we know we're having Dan here in a little bit. BB Nate mentioned that earlier. We were joking about how is that even possible? But then next week, we're going to have...
We're not even paying him.
No. And he's like, yeah, exactly. And next week, we're going to have Pete Fletzer from Around the Galaxy podcast. And we're going to be continuing. We've got Adam Lance Garcia on the schedule for this. We've got Dominic Jones from the Star Wars Underworld scheduled to be on this. We've got Michael Condon from 2Med2's Back to Tank. We've got a lot of these great Star Wars content creators coming on the show. And we want to get their feedback. So if you have a Star Wars content creator, podcaster, YouTuber that fits our model, positive, family friendly. I had to talk with Michael a little bit about that sometime. That type of thing. And you want them to be on the show, then send us a message, send us a tweet, or email us at TatooineSons@yahoo.com, and we'll check into it and see. We'd love to get your feedback on people that you want to have on there. Okay, are you guys ready to kind of move on?
Yeah,
I'm excited. Dan's here. So we should probably let Dan talk now,
right?
That he's here. All right. So looking forward into the next few years, Star Wars is going to be all about the characters that we've come to love, like Boba Fett and Obi-Wan Kenobi and Darth Vader, Anakin Skywalker, Ahsoka. But for now, Star Wars is asking fans to just trust them with some new good guys, some new villains, and then locations that are in a timeline that we've never experienced before. And, all of this is only going to be in print. So how are fans going to respond? Well, we've got Dan Z from Coffee with Kenobi on the show. He's going to help us answer these questions and more. And that's all up next on Hot Takes.
This is where the fun begins.
Well, you want the bad news or the really bad news?
Impressive. Every word in that sentence was wrong.
All right, so we've got we've got Dan Z. I mean, we were joking about this earlier, but it's like, you know, how the heck do we get Dan Zehr from Coffee with Kenobi on the show? You know, and I was telling the boys is in the segment right before this, I was telling them, Dan, that it's like you come on the show so you can have conversations with us and then remember how smart you are, because I listen to your guys' show and think about how smart you guys are, and it's like, man, well, Happy New Year, welcome to the show, Dan.
Hey, Happy New Year, guys, and I am but a mirror. It's wonderful to be a part of this great community, and I'm so grateful that you asked me on again.
We're excited about it. And the first time we had you on the show for one of our main shows, we talked High Republic, because that was when they had just recently, I think just a few days before that, given us a roster of some of the Jedi and the characters. And we were talking through some of those and giving us a little bit more information. And now, can you believe it? By tomorrow, we're all going to have the first copy, or you may already have a copy probably, but the general public will have access to Light of the Jedi by Charles Soule. It's a pretty exciting time for Star Wars, isn't it?
You know, it is a very exciting time, and I do recall when we were on, because we were describing what we thought these characters might be like based on the images on StarWars.com. And yes, I do have a copy of the book. I've had it for about a month.
Awesome.
Wow. You guys, believe the hype, believe the excitement, anticipation. It's wonderful, particularly Charles's first book. It's the pacing, the build-up, the way it adds to the lore, but also feels very familiar at the same time. This is going to be one that's going to be a game changer, and wow. I'm not just being hyperbolic, because I don't do that. It really is really, really well done, and it feels like a logical next step in Star Wars, really.
Interesting.
That's really curious, because we love Charles Soule's comics work that he's done. Of course, the Dark Lord of the Sith, Darth Vader series was phenomenal. We absolutely
read it multiple times at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. And BB Nate's a big comic. So it's exciting that Charles is doing this. I've read the first, I think it's 7-8 chapters that were available online of this book. And I finished the last chapter yesterday afternoon, and I knocked on the door of the room that Sam and Nate were playing a video game, and I'm like, this thing is good. It's really good. So I'm excited about it. But here's what's interesting. You know, season 1 of The Mandalorian, it tried to prove, or at least it looked like it was trying to prove, that Star Wars can thrive without the Luke Skywalkers and the Han Solos and all those legacy characters that we've become so familiar with. But then season 2 came along, and it brought in Boba Fett and Ahsoka and Bo-Katan and Luke Skywalker. And so all of those characters that we didn't need in the first season, we got in the second season. And what we have with the High Republic is, we've got some amazing new Jedi in Avar Kriss and Loden Greatstorm and all these. We're going to have some new villains and things, but they're not characters that we have relationships with or that we're familiar with. Dan, what do you think about this? Can Star Wars, or what does it mean, is probably the better question, to have Star Wars without the characters that we've come to know and love?
Right. Well, I guess Lucas kind of dipped his toes in those proverbial waters back in 1999 with the Phantom Menace, because we had some familiar characters, but they were de-aged, or they were, different versions of them that we were used to. So there were little linking threads. And then we get to the Mandalorian, and eventually some characters show up that we're somewhat familiar with, or at least some concepts that we're familiar with. But because of the genius of Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau, and now, of course, the Lucasfilm Story Group, you've got these connecting threads. So with the High Republic, you've got Coruscant, you've got the Jedi Order at its absolute peak. Yoda is certainly a factor in this as well. But it's up to great storytellers to tell great stories. And whether you have Luke or you don't, you've got the capacity to do great things, because Star Wars is this wonderful sweeping canvas that offers a mythology and a new way to tell some familiar themes, but through a different lens. So I think it's probably daunting. But when you've got someone like Charles Soule, as we have all just talked about, then the odds are really, really very high, because he knows how to tell a good story. He already knows how to use the Star Wars pen, to an expert level. And so I think it's great. And honestly, I'm sort of at a point, and you guys are probably reaching that too, or if not, you're already well past it, where you're just kind of like, you know what? If Luke and those guys show up, it's great. But I think I'm good. Like, I don't need any more Luke or Han or Leia. We've got 40 plus years of them. After a while, it gets a little congested. I sort of have a hard time following the current Star Wars comic book storyline, because I'm kind of at a place where I'm at peace with where they're at. And I don't need more, because it gets too crowded, and it stretches the the limits of credibility to a degree where it's almost like, look, these people can't even be realistic in their own fictional world because it's just too much.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, at some point you need to take a nap, for crying out loud.
So do you think like these new characters that they're bringing in, like this Loden Greatstorm and stuff, from what you've read, do you think they could end up becoming like fan favorites almost? Not, I mean, they won't ever live up to the legend of Luke Skywalker and stuff, but do you think that they can become as popular with fans as some of the legends that we've come to know and love?
Right. Well, I guess history is going to say that. I mean, look at in such a short amount of time how much Din Djarin has taken over our hearts, and of course the child. So I think there's a great possibility there for Star Wars fans. As far as the general public, I sometimes think that kind of stuff needs to be more live action based because Ahsoka's been so huge, but it took a long time for her to grow.
It did.
And then, of course, actually Eckstein helped to take her to another level. And then once she's become live action, now the capacity is going to be gigantic. I mean, once her show comes out, who knows? So I guess we'll have to wait and see if these characters ever make the leap into the Filoni-verse and what's going on in Disney Plus before we can really make that. But certainly the possibility is there.
Yeah, I think that these new books are going to totally change what we think of Star Wars. It's already taking place way before Phantom Menace and way before we've seen in the new Disney canon. So it's really, really exciting to see Avar Kriss and Loden Greatstorm and these really strange names, but
they're all strange in Star Wars. That's what, until they become normal again, right?
It seems like what I've been hoping for is introducing a legacy character to pass the torch down to these new characters for new fans, generations, to be able to learn to love these characters.
Like having these characters that could become your own. Kind of like what happened. See, BB Nate was... His position on Luke Skywalker showing up in The Mandalorian was, wow, that was so cool. But man, I wish that green lightsaber was Ezra Bridger. And I think that's really interesting because, you know, he's the Disney generation of Star Wars, and his emotions are not tied to Luke as they were to Ezra. And I think it's cool, BB Nate, that you're thinking that way when it comes to even some of these characters. So,
and we're still going to get Yoda in this, so it's not going to be completely new characters, but we're not going to have nearly as many.
Yeah, and 700-year-old Yoda, what does that mean for Star Wars? It's hard to figure that out.
He doesn't have to sit on the couch to put on the socks. He's still in good shape.
That's right. Yeah, he's kind of in his prime. I hope like he told Luke, I hope I look as good as him at 700. If I even make it to 70, will be good. It's interesting. The most exciting thing about the High Republic, from my perspective, is this coordination of all of the authors and the story group as they try to craft an entirely new Star Wars story. It's really hasn't ever been done like this before in the franchise. But as I think about this High Republic content that's coming out, you've got a series of all of these different books, you've got the comics, you've got all of these different things, and then I'm looking at this. I was looking at a chart online. I think it was put out by Star Wars and by Lucasfilm of the different characters and the different books or comics that they were going to be in, and I felt like that GIF of the guy with the conspiracy board that's rolling his hands, like it looked like one of those types of boards, and it felt like there's so much that's coming out. Dan, do you think it's asking a lot for Star Wars fans to embrace all of this, especially with it not being in a visual medium, it's being just in the written form?
I think it's bold because, clearly, when this was supposed to be out like a while ago, right? We should be 6 to 8 months within the kind of the full scope of this, but obviously things got pushed back because of COVID-19. So now they got something of a daunting task, but Disney Publishing and Michael Sigling and the Lucasfilm team have done such a good job of hyping this thing and building the hype, slowly but surely forward. I feel like that's when Star Wars is at its best, when we're excited and we're anticipating what's going to happen. So is it going to take the success? Will it take on the success of The Mandalorian? Highly unlikely. But honestly, what does? Well, even with the Marvel stuff won't do that on Disney Plus, most likely. So in almost like in a way, and I'm curious to see what you all think about this. So feel free to weigh in for sure. Mm-hmm. But when something takes a hold like that, it has to be very new and kind of take the world by storm. Mm-hmm. So this is a new time in Star Wars, a new timeline in Star Wars. But taking franchise expanding stuff and putting into prose is not new, obviously. Mm-hmm. You've got the Expanding Universe Forever, now the Legends line, and then all the great Star Wars books that Del Rey puts out in Disney Publishing. So I don't know. What do you guys think?
I think it will draw in a lot of people just because of the fact that it is a new era. We're going to see so much new stuff. But then again, people don't read quite as much as they used to. I'm guilty of that. I used to read a whole lot, but I just don't read like I used to. But I want to read this just because it sounds so interesting. So maybe it will bring in more people just because of that. But I do feel like it is going to be limited in its written format just because, people don't read as much anymore. They want things to be quick. They want visual, exciting stuff. And it's not that case in books. People have got to take time for it.
Yeah, I think that the comic side of it. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, as a teacher and as a parent, I face this all the time.
Sure.
You really, if it does take hold, it's really going to take hold because you really got to find something captivating. And I think, and you've read the first 7, 8 chapters, the way that the chapters are really short, much in a short amount, I feel like that's going to get people to turn the page more readily.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's funny because I'm a writer. I've done some writing as well, and I've got a book that I'm writing right now, and I'm intentionally writing short chapters that leave you wondering what's going to happen next because I know the way I read, and if a chapter is short enough, it's like 3 to 5 minutes on my Kindle is what it says, and it's like I finish it, and I'm like, oh man, I want to know what's going to happen next, and I see the next chapter is only 4 minutes. I'm like, I could read the next chapter. The next thing you know, it's 14 chapters later because I've kept going, and I think that's I did notice that about this. But BB Nate, you're the comic book one in this family. I mean, when it's birthday and Christmas time, it's comics that you're getting with it. Do you think that these comic series could really bring in new fans to this idea, the High Republic?
I do. I think that it will grasp the opportunity that these fantastic writers are now teaming up to make these hopefully fantastic comics. Myself, I'm a DC guy, and I'm very cautious when it comes to Marvel comics. They're very hit and miss. You can get some really ones that are just like, that was not good at all. Then you get Dark Lord of the Sith, and you're like, that was fantastic. With the concept that they're going for right now in the comics, I think it'll be great. If they get the right authors and the right artists, I think that it will take off. The fact that they're having children's books is also great.
Young reader books.
To kind of push people in directions of going more into this story. I'm very excited that one of the comic stories is going to follow the Nihil.
Nihil? I don't know how to pronounce that. Do you know how to pronounce that, Dan?
I think it's Nihil, like nihilism.
Okay.
Yeah. Following the villains. And I think that will be the side of what's hooked me into this whole thing was what makes the Jedi afraid. So, and it's them, and I'm excited to see the comic lines that are going from that.
The only thing that's off-putting to me about the comics is it takes a lot of work and effort to keep up with the comics. I know how much you like. No, like Nate, you like all the time. You're like, man, I really need to go to the comic store. I'm really behind on this one series or whatever, and that's a little daunting to me because I don't want to have to like focus and be like, oh, a new comic came out this week, I gotta go get it. That's why I'm a fan of like the omnibus thing. Like we didn't really read the Darth Vader Dark Lord of the Sith till like it was out, and we were able to pretty much get the whole collection and read it at that point. I prefer that because then I don't have to worry about what the next issue is or when it's coming out. I can just read it all at once, kind of like a book. So that's a little daunting to me with the comic side of things.
And no, I totally get that, and also because you have to worry about spoiler culture too, where people are just throwing stuff out there, so you have to almost kind of hide from what you love, right? Hide from fandom to a degree because you don't want people to spoil stuff for you, and it does. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, doing what we do for our other gigs in our lives, sometimes it becomes like homework. So if you're going to spend that kind of time on it, you really want it to be worth your while.
I mean, going off of what he said, it is a daunting task, but it is also, when you have the full collection in your hand, it's exciting. You get to read it all. That's great. But the excitement of waiting for the next week, waiting for that next chapter.
It's episodic, like what we get with The Mandalorian and such.
It's very exciting. I'm way behind on one of my DC series, but I read this issue and I'm like, I'm excited for the next one. I'm excited to learn what the next story will be. And I think that it's going to play out very well for what they're trying to do with the High Republic, especially with them putting out novels off the wazoo, adding this point of episodic short little bites for you to be able to take in and also visualize what the world would be like is going to help a lot for people, I think.
That's good.
True.
I'm sold.
Well, BB Nate, you brought up the bad guys with it, and you can't talk about this series without what you said is really the key thing. You know, the Jedi are cool and all, but having a bad guy that was built around and crafted around the entire idea of they were trying to answer the question, what scares the Jedi? And not just the Jedi that we've seen in, you know, Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones in that era. They brought in the Sith, and we had this legend of the Sith. We had this idea of who the Sith were, and so they bring that in, and we already know where we're going with it. In this, we're 200 years earlier. It's at the height of the Jedi, and something is going to happen that's going to terrify them with it. Dan, what do you think about these villains in Star Wars that aren't Sith or even the Empire? What do you think about this idea?
I think this is going to be what makes or breaks it, honestly, because you don't want to do something that's been done before. You want to do something fresh and original, but still have that familiar Star Wars vibe to it. So getting the Jedi to question their philosophy or their belief system at a time when they're, you know, as close to, in their minds, perfection is attainable, I think that's intriguing because, you know, if they're going to be afraid, well, that's a path to the dark side.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to get a lot of personal conflicts, you know, man versus self. To me, that's the most intriguing part of literature anyway. So this is going to be what makes or breaks it.
Yeah, I mean, when you heard, like, when they were talking about this High Republic and they were talking about the bad guys, like, towards the beginning, and they explained that they designed them to be what the Jedi, they designed them to answer the question of what fears the Jedi, that really intrigued me because I don't think the Jedi are supposed to be afraid of anything.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they were worried about the Sith, but I don't even think they were ever really afraid.
No, there's this
Sith.
arrogance. We were just watching for Revenge of the Sith last night, and it's, you know, Palpatine is all, you know, he's a Sith Lord, and they're, you know, Obi-Wan's like, Sith Lords are our speciality. Right. You've gotten your tail kicked by this guy multiple times.
Right. Yeah. Like, but to think that this Nihil or whatever, or Nile, can scare the Jedi, and they're not even technically, well, to my knowledge, Force users or Sith. Right. That's interesting.
I think that the fact that these Jedi are at a point where they have nothing to be afraid of or even worried about, they don't have very many threats. They're glorified policemen at this point. So having this new group, this new type of enemy just thrown at you, I'm sure it'll make these people afraid, but it also has to do with, of course, no spoilers, but the Tales from the Galaxy's Edge DLC that we got had to do a lot with the High Republic, and it was all about this one Padawan and what scared her. And I think it had a little bit to do with the Nile. It kind of hinted at one point, but it was great, and I think that it was a great introduction as to what you can expect from the High Republic storyline. And so I think that these villains are going to be a lot more important going from now on than I guess we expected.
That's awesome.
Well, honestly, just the first 100 pages alone, the way that Charles Soule sort of reshapes and reformulates the Force and what it means for the Jedi to connect to the Force, that alone is quite exciting. And I think that alone will
absolutely
build the anticipation for what you're going to read.
The way that the Force is I heard it described as a symphony that was being conducted by this one Jedi. I don't want to spoil any more than that, but it's just like, it's unreal. So
I was like a little bit on the fence as to whether I was going to start reading this book or not, but y'all have like basically sold me at this point. Like I got to pick up a copy, and I don't read it on the Kindle. I prefer physical books.
I know, that's the other part that's tough.
You'll dig it, man. I can't wait to hear what you think.
It's awesome. Well, we're doing a series starting this week, this episode on throughout the month of January. We're doing it on the Phantom Menace, and you and I go back to Star Wars when we didn't know if we would ever get anything after Return of the Jedi when it comes to films. And so I'd love to get sort of your short thoughts on the Phantom Menace as a film before we let you go, Dan.
Short? Have you met me? Come on.
I know you love this one.
I love Phantom Menace. The first I saw it at midnight, of course, when it first came out. And when I walked out, I didn't really know what to think. It didn't feel familiar to me, and I was confused. And I think I stayed up most of the night just kind of contemplating it. And then I woke up and got over myself, and I kind of embraced Qui-Gon Jinn and Darth Maul and what it adds to the galaxy. And Phantom Menace sets off the prequels, which is such a beautiful era in Star Wars storytelling because of all the depth of the Jedi and the Force. We learned so much about Padawans and the place in the galaxy for the Jedi. And it's such a beautiful film, and the score by John Williams is exquisite as well. And one thing I really like about it is Jar Jar Binks. All three of my kids, I've got 7, 18, and 21. They all love Jar Jar. They all laugh at him like David, like you and I do with the Three Stooges. And it's glorious. I think it's great fun. I think it's an awesome film. I love it.
That's great. Now, since the last time we had you on, you had a book come out. Tell everybody about that.
Yeah, I co-wrote the Star Wars book alongside Pablo Hidalgo and Cole Horton. It's a series of pretty in-depth essays, which allows us to really explore Star Wars in a much more profound way than really has ever been done in literature form along the lines of DK, because they've always had these wonderful, beautiful books that are very much the what everything is, but I looked at it as sort of the how and the why it all works together. And I really got to dive in, and knowing that I got to contribute to part of Star Wars canon is pretty beautiful and surreal. So it's a great book. I've been told it's sort of like the ultimate Star Wars textbook. And as a teacher, that's a good thing.
That is cool, isn't it?
I hope everybody checks it out because it's really great. It's sold very, very well, and it's opened up a lot of conversations, which I think is exciting.
What's the best way to use this book? Is it a read straight through type of book, or is it a reference book, or what would you suggest? Or is it both?
I think it's kind of a hybrid, honestly. You can read it cover to cover. You're gonna be really ensconced in Star Wars, and it's gonna, like, the stuff with the Force I'm particularly proud of because they asked me to help define the Force. So I did that, and so just to be able to look at that and sort of see how it fits and how it works together, and incorporating everything from George and then Dave, and then everything from Clone Wars and Rebels and other things that are coming out was really, really awesome. Really, really awesome. So honestly, you can just pick it up and after watching The Mandalorian say, oh, wait, what's going on with that character? What's the Darksaber about? You can go and find that entry and read about it, or you can explore different things about the Skywalker saga altogether. It really is kind of a unique book into itself.
It is a lot of fun.
Feel the same way, even if I didn't have something to do with it.
That's cool. That's awesome. Well, Dan, we so much appreciate you coming on the show. Tell everybody about, Coffee with Kenobi and all the things that you guys are doing.
Yeah, well, thank you guys so much. It's always a pleasure to be on the show. Again, the family community that you have actually as a family, and the way you make us all feel a part of your family is very appreciated. So thank you so much for that. As far as me, you can find me on Twitter at Mr. Zehr, MRZEHR, or Dan Zehr CWK on Instagram. Then Coffee with Kenobi is all over social media. Subscribe on YouTube. You can see us on Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, Instagram every Monday night at 8 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time for Facebook Live. And then I write for StarWars.com. I just interviewed Claudia Gray for Star Wars, her High Republic book, Into the Dark, which is really, really a great book as well. If you are someone who is starting a brand or has one and you want to help kind of build your brand, you can reach out to me at danzmedia.com, and I can help you take that first step into a larger world.
It's pretty awesome. Dan, thank you so much. May the Force be with you.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you so much, gentlemen. Happy New Year, and keep up the great work.
You too.
Are you brainless?
I never asked that question until after I've done it.
What?
All right, we got some poll results.
Yeah.
If we can record them right.
Yeah.
So you never know. You never know what's going on behind the scenes. It's Tatooine Sons recording.
Nope.
Yeah, that's why Dan Z won't have us on his show, probably. Okay, that was a fun interview, though. That was pretty cool. All right, the greatest Star Wars moment of 2020. That was our poll from last week. We gave you 3 different options, and you could give your own. Ahsoka in live action, the new announcements, Luke in the Mandalorian, got a lot of Boba Fett.
Good. I don't know why that wasn't an option.
That were on there.
Because Boba Fett's not that cool. But, okay.
but without a doubt, I think that the winner on the poll was by far the best moment of the year. So, and that's my opinion. But anyway, other comment below got 9.3%. The new announcements, that's the one I picked. I thought having a future for Star Wars would get more excitement from people, but that only got 11.1%. Ahsoka in live action.
That's what I would have chose. I chose Ahsoka in live action because it means we're getting a TV series, which is really the only thing that excites me.
You just want to see where Ezra Bridger is.
I do.
And if you want to buy a Where's Ezra Bridger shirt, you can go to our website.
Shameless plug.
Or search it on TeePublic. We sold another one of those just last night. Anyway, cool. And some pork shirts. We sold some pork shirts. Nice. So anyway, that got 24.8%, but the runaway winner, understandably,
was Baby Yoda. Was Grogu's name reveal. If you wouldn't believe it, it ran away with
212%.
Not 50. Yeah, no. Luke and the Mandalorian, 54.9%.
Wow. That got more traction than I thought it would.
You know, that scene, I like seeing Luke, but
it wasn't.
In my opinion, I'm not seeing all the hype around it.
Yeah, me neither.
That's because you're not original trilogy fans.
Right,
and I think that's the beauty of this show is you've got people like me that they're like, there's no doubt that that's the biggest moment of the year. And then you've got your generation, which is sequel trilogy era. And they're like, that was awesome. But I want Ahsoka. I want Boba Fett. I want, there's other things that are in there. And I think that's what makes this really interesting. This week's poll, as we're going to be talking, High Republic, we talked with Dan Z about that. And he, again, he understands so much more about this stuff than I'll ever dream of understanding. And so it's always good to have Dan explain those things. We're going to talk about that in the poll. Finish the sentence. My plan for the High Republic is, so meaning your plan, like as a listener or a Star Wars fan.
Okay.
What's your plan so finish the sentence. My plan for the High Republic is to first you read all of it or pick and choose or no plan at all or other comment below. What would you guys say?
I'll probably end up picking and choosing. I don't read much in the first place, so if I do read something, it might be a here and there, or it might be a comic, because I know they're doing a few comic series, right?
Yeah, they are. Yeah. Nate, what do you think?
I'll probably be picking and choosing as well. I'll probably read maybe 1 or 2 of the comic series, but next year is a heavy year for DC Comics, so I have to keep my priorities straight now.
Oh my goodness! I'm going to kick him out of the family. All right, This is a Star Wars family first and foremost, young man. Okay, it'll be.
As both your sons aren't actually wearing Star Wars shirts right now.
I know. What is this?
I don't know. I felt like wearing an NASA shirt.
NASA, and then you got a Dwight Schrute false shirt on, BB Nate.
In the font of Battlestar Galactica, of course.
Hey, I mean, I got to give respect on that. Anything that's going to have Battlestar Galactica font is pretty cool. So, all right, why don't we continue on and talk about some other things? 2021 is the year that we go deep into the saga. January is going to be all about the Phantom Menace, which for those of us that were like around for the episode 1, that was like what we thought the High Republic was. So this was confusing. In fact, I think Dan mentioned that on the show the first time we had him on. But the story begins with the revelation that things aren't always what they seem to be. And after the break, we're going to go in and talk about some of the, what I consider the first act of the Phantom Menace. This is Tatooine Sons. Well, after 16 years of wondering and waiting, Star Wars fans entered theaters in May of 1999 to return to a galaxy far, far away. They knew that they would get the Jedi and they would get Sith and they would get lightsabers and a whole lot more. But what they got along with it was a little different than they expected. just a little bit. Over the month of January, though, we're going to be discussing the big moments of the Phantom Menace and their implications for the saga.
Hokey religions and ancient weapons are no match for a good blaster at your side, kid.
Rebellions are built on hope.
Force is with me, and I am with the Force.
If you live long enough, you see the same eyes in different people.
Okay, before we dive in and break down the first act and all the fun stuff that we're going to talk about in that, just give me your initial thoughts on Phantom Menace. We'll start with you, BB Nate.
It's okay.
It's okay.
It's Star Wars. It's fun.
So any Star Wars is good Star Wars. That's our rule.
And it is. I enjoy it. It's one of those that I can go to every so often just to watch it. It's not one that I'm going to be watching a ton of times in quick succession, but it's one I'll touch up on every now and then. It's fun. The pod racing stuff is fun. The acting is... The writing is okay. I think the acting was fine. We got Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan finally. That kind of introduced it. We had Qui-Gon, which from Dooku Jedi Lost, it grew a lot more appreciation for him. So
good.
Yeah, it's a fun movie.
Samuel the Hutt.
Yeah, I'm kind of with Nathan. It's not the best by any means, but I'm not saying Jar Jar ruined the movie or anything. It's fun. It certainly got a lot of implications for the story. I mean, without it, you don't have Anakin. You don't have Padme. I mean, you don't have so much stuff that becomes integral later on in the story. Plus, Darth Maul. That's fun. They introduced Darth Maul, which becomes a super important character later on in the Clone Wars. And
we'll talk about that in the final episode of the month as we talk about the implications of the Phantom Menace. But overall, everybody's my opinion is probably the same. It was absolutely mind blowing to go to the theaters and see a Star Wars, because other than the special editions, we've talked about this on the show a bunch, other than seeing the special editions, I didn't get to see Star Wars in theaters.
Right.
And so when I got to go and see a new Star Wars in theaters and see the Jedi at their height is what we all thought. With it, and then of course Darth Maul, and you're sitting there and it's Palpatine, it's Senator Palpatine, and knowing enough background on the story that was the name of the Emperor in the original novelization, and so it had to be the same guy, and if that's the Emperor, and all these things are coming together, as sort of a Star Wars film fan that left that in the past with my childhood, and had done a little bit with some EU stuff or Legends stuff or whatever we call it now, with Heir to the Empire and some Dark Forces and that type of thing. To go into the theater and see this, it was awesome. The more you watch it, the more you start to go, yeah, maybe not as good as some of the others, but that doesn't mean we were talking earlier when we started. All Star Wars is good Star Wars. We get the opportunity. Let's talk about this first act of this film as we kind of wrap our heads around where we are in this. It starts off really weird. I know we've talked about this on the show before. Sam, you and I talked a little bit about this. The taxation of trade routes and disputed territories and stuff like that. Do you think that kind of a opening to the saga it created some of the challenges that people have with Phantom Menace?
Yeah, I mean, I still don't understand entirely the beginning. How does this all relate to a war starting? It's still so complicated. I mean, you're expected to understand some pretty complex political stuff within the 30-second title crawl, and then you're like, all right, this is it, you're in the show, you better know what's happening at this point. And I think that could be a little bit jarring, because if you don't understand that, you don't understand why the Jedi are there, why the Separatists are even a thing, why they're at odds with the Republic. How does taxation of this one trade route to this one planet go to a full-out galactic civil war where Luke comes in and stuff? Yeah. It's really complicated, and you're expected to understand it really quickly. So I think that can be where some of the frustrations come from.
BB Nate, this the thing about Star Wars is it sort of starts in the middle of the story. That's the classic episode 4 approach, right? You've got, we find out we're in the middle of a story. We're being thrust into the middle of it, and we just have to pick it up. And do you think that that's a lot about what George Lucas was trying to go for? Even though it was episode 1, it was showing that there's a bigger thing going on. This has been going on before episode 1. There's a bigger story here. There's galactic implications politically that are going on that are going to lead to this. Do you think that's what he was trying to do with this?
He had a desire to make more films. He had a want to be able to flesh out the story of other characters. And I felt like he put in those storylines and threw you into the middle to be able to give you the sense of this galaxy, what it is about, how the characters act, how everything is set up, the villains, the good guys, how they are related to the story. And then if it succeeded, which I guess it kind of did, he could make more movies. He could flesh out that rest of that trilogy, end the saga, wait a long time, one of the dark periods, and then release more movies explaining these characters and how they act.
I think the thing that we walk into the movie and we don't understand is that we don't realize we can't figure out who the bad guys are. In this, it's these Jedi. They're on a diplomatic mission, and then all of a sudden somebody's trying to kill them, and it's over trade routes, and they end up on this planet, and there's these crazy Gungans, which are different than we've experienced before, and they're at conflict with the land dwellers, and there's just all this. It's like we have to try to figure out and understand too much of what's going on before we even realize that there's this Sith Lord that's orchestrating all of this. What we don't know early enough, I think, for me in the film, is that Darth Sidious is behind all of this, and there's this Sith Lord that's orchestrating this. He's the one that's trying to kill the Jedi. He's the one that's trying to bring Naboo under this control, because he becomes, watching the supercut last night, Palpatine is amazing. He is an amazing character, and we don't really figure out who that is really throughout this storyline, and that he's the one that's doing all of this. The whole goal in this is to attack the home planet of Senator Palpatine, Naboo, in order to propel him politically to the position of Chancellor in the Senate, so he can begin to maneuver and take control of the galaxy. But we don't really understand that that's what's going on in this. It's just sort of an undercurrent story that's throughout this. I think it makes it really, really hard to pick up on. You know, they get there, they go to the planet, they have all of their fun with the Gungans, and there's always a bigger fish, and saving Padme or Queen Amidala is what I should probably call her at this point. And they get onto the ship and they fly off, and of course the hyperdrive gets destroyed. And we have that awesome scene with R2, the introduction of R2-D2 into the saga from the episode 1 standpoint. And he's in there and he's trying to save the ship, and he's R2. He's R2 being R2 with it. But the hyperdrive's busted and they land on this planet of Tatooine. It's not like we don't understand exactly what's happening when they get to Tatooine. Right. It's like, oh, there's a planet. We need to land somewhere. Oh, I found this planet called Tatooine. And we kind of know where it's going from this point. Do you think that hurts the story too? Is they get to Tatooine and you're like, okay, we know they're going to find Anakin. We know that they're going to have to take him with them. Do you think that hurts the story because we have already seen chapters 4, 5, and 6, episodes 4, 5, and 6, or do you think that it's just part of it?
No, I think it's necessary. We needed to see how Anakin was brought into the story. So, if you're watching the film and that's coming, I don't think that takes away from the experience. And in fact, I think it'll almost make you pay attention more, because you're like, oh, this is where things are happening. This is how Anakin's brought into the story. So no, I don't think it hurts anything at all. I think it's important.
What do you think about that, BB Nate? What do you think about going to Tatooine and that whole section of the film as far as it relates to the rest of the storyline?
I mean, it's kind of an easy way to cop out. Oh, we need to go to this planet because we don't have enough. Our hyperdrive's down. This is the closest planet. It's kind of like a coincidence, but I think it helps propel the story forward. It gives you this idea of, that Anakin is this super evil guy in the future, but then of course he turns good at the end, but you understand that he was not a good person, and how does that happen? And so you're going through the story, and then you meet this nice innocent little kid just trying to work to stay alive, and you have no idea how he could become Darth Vader. And so I think it's very necessary, and I think that it's important that we meet Anakin Skywalker so early into the film as well. I mean,
do you think that one of the criticisms of the film, and people have suggested it would have been better had we just picked up without any almost an episode 2 level connection? Like, he's already a Padawan, he's already with Obi-Wan, we don't need Qui-Gon Jinn, nothing in that first film, the Machete Order, nothing in that first film was really all that necessary to continue the storyline. I mean, yes, we wouldn't get Qui-Gon, yes, we wouldn't get Darth Maul, but we could tell the story of Anakin Skywalker and his fall without that. Do you think that it would have been better to pick up?
The story would have gotten fleshed out eventually anyway, I think. I think you need to know exactly how Anakin is brought into things. You need to understand his connection with his mother to understand his fall to the dark side later. I mean, that is a critical moment in episode 2. I mean, sure, barring any of the memes, I killed them all or whatever. No, it's a very key moment, and you wouldn't understand his connection with his mother if you didn't see episode 1 and that pain of being taken away from her.
Going back to them flying to Tatooine, if you want to go in a time machine to the period between episode 1 and episode 2 and speculation and all that crazy stuff that was out there on message boards, this is the very beginning of sort of the mainstream internet world.
Right.
With it. One of the theories that was out there was that Obi-Wan chose Tatooine knowingly because he was from Tatooine. And that goes back to some EU novels that have Owen Lars as the half-brother of Obi-Wan Kenobi. And so the theory was he knew Tatooine because he grew up on Tatooine, or he was, because that whole thing, choosing children before they're grown up and stuff, that was all, stuff that we didn't understand,
right?
With it. So that he was from Tatooine, and he went and Owen, and it was all that kind of stuff. It was
bizarre.
Yeah, that's the fan speculation world.
Was it like super toxic back then?
Yeah, it had moments. I mean, I didn't realize it because I wasn't as involved in like the message boards as other people were. But I remember after episode 2 having like questions about the story and going online to try to figure things out and finding the toxicity and being like, oh my God, people hate these movies. And, it would be like being a super casual Star Wars fan. Like, you'd seen the prequels, you'd seen 4, 5, and 6, you'd watched Force Awakens, but you didn't get involved in Facebook or Twitter or social media or anything like that. Watching The Last Jedi, liking The Last Jedi a lot, but having questions about it and going online and then finding The Last Jedi stuff. It was like that, seeing that. So, yeah, that's a rabbit trail to some extent. I think you bring up a really good point, Samuel. We don't get to... George Lucas is trying to communicate that Anakin's fall, he's the chosen one. He's Qui-Gon finds him and senses, the midichlorians thing. We don't need to go down that path. I think that that's going to actually become a lot more mainstream because of Mandalorian and other things that are happening in the future. I think it's cool. I'm thrilled with it. I never had a problem with the midichlorians until people started telling me I was supposed to have a problem with the midichlorians. I think it's a lot of problems we have with fandom. We don't have problems with these movies, so people tell us to have a problem with the movies.
Yep. I have a problem with that.
I have it's the Wonder Woman Last Jedi thing. I think that most, I think there are people that genuinely don't like those movies. I'm not saying that, but I think that's fine. There are people that are sort of been like, that would be like, yeah, that was fun. But then they read all the crap and then they're like, oh, I'm not supposed to like this movie. So I'm not, and that may be oversimplifying it. I'm not trying to suggest that people are sheeple. But sometimes
peer pressure is the thing.
It is, absolutely. I like the Midichlorians. I like Qui-Gon Jinn. As far as a character in the film, he was sort of
one-dimensional.
Yeah, he was. He was one-dimensional in that film with it. But he's got this idea of the chosen one prophecy, and I've got to take this kid with me. And everything becomes about taking the child. And we know from Clone Wars, we know from Rebels, we know from other things that becomes a major, doctrine within the Jedi Order of taking children off their planets with it, which we've talked about also sort of is mimicked by the First Order and by the Empire with taking children to be stormtroopers. It's sort of like which one is wrong and which one is right here. But anyway, that relationship with Shmi is important. I think that's what George Lucas is trying to get out on this. He's a child taken from his mother, and we've talked about it last year when we did the whole episode on him, on Anakin. He has to grow up too quickly. With it, he's ripped from everything he knows. He's thrust with this mantle, this pressure of being the chosen one, and pulled from his mother.
And you've also got to keep in mind, it's not normal for the Jedi to take in someone who's so old because they're already set in their ways.
That
enough
attachment
to where
thing.
It's a problem. Like, sure, he did grow up too fast, but that's because he had known otherwise. You take a kid who's really young and then start to raise them as a Jedi, it's a totally different experience because they don't know any different. He's old enough to make his own decisions and have his own opinions on things.
And it plays into the rest of the whole prequel saga, trilogy.
He's held to a higher standard the entire time.
And just imagine you're a slave on Tatooine and then getting these two weird wizards coming to you and saying, hey, you're the chosen one, you're supposed to save the galaxy. It's jarring.
It is.
And then
it's funny. I'm looking at these quotes on my sound effects board, and I hear this.
Be careful not to choke on your aspirations.
Maybe he's looking back on his past when he says that to Krennic, and he's thinking, you get a little too cocky, it's going to come back to bite you.
And talking about growing up too fast, even in Revenge of the Sith last night, he was put on the council at an age younger than any Jedi before. But it still didn't even happen the way it was supposed to.
Not true, though.
What do you mean?
One of the Jedi in the High Republic is only 16 when she's made a master.
So nobody knew about
no,
that?
wait, maybe she's a knight. I think that maybe.
I think it's a knight.
It's a knight.
That's it. So, but he's put on the council at a younger age than anyone before, but he's still not even a master. So it's kind of like, you're giving me the responsibility, but you're also not.
Hey, you're the chosen one, but the main Jedi Grandmaster doesn't.
Yeah, we're getting ahead of ourselves. We're getting to episode 3 conversation.
But
That's
we're talking about him growing up too fast.
Yeah, but I totally get it. And the other thing is we see a lot of the arrogance of the Jedi Council, of the Jedi Order. I really see it in Obi-Wan. That moment where Qui-Gon is talking to Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan's back at the ship, and he says, "Why do I feel like we've picked up another pathetic life form?"
Yeah,
that's come on. That's classic Obi-Wan.
Yeah,
in his dismissive, sort of arrogant, sassy thing. But at the same time, that's kind of the way the Jedi think about people that aren't like him. That aren't Jedi.
Yeah.
With it.
Peasants.
They're lower forms than them. And that was a big problem. I'm curious to see if we see a little bit of that in the High Republic stuff that comes out. And then, of course, we get our first conflict, right? Our first lightsaber duel before the end of the first act between Maul and Qui-Gon. And when I remember sitting in the theater and watching it and expecting Qui-Gon to hold his own pretty easily. With Maul, because he's a Jedi, right? And it becomes pretty clear that Maul's looks like he's getting the better of Qui-Gon Jinn.
At first he took on 2 Jedi at once. Like, that's not easy to do.
I'm talking. I'm talking about on Tatooine.
Oh, yeah.
It's like there's a battle that's going on there, and it looks like he's gonna take him out.
Yeah. He almost took out Anakin on the way over there too.
Yeah. So, well, what's that introduction of Maul? I know we see him a little bit earlier in the some little moments, but seeing him as a full on Sith, what's that like for you guys when you see that?
It's interesting is definitely the way to put it. It's really cool to just see this new Sith, this weird looking Sith. We've never seen anything like this before at this point, of a different alien life form, horned villain.
Yeah.
I mean, just look at him and you're like, bad guy. So, and of course you don't know his origins until you get to Clone Wars. So he's mysterious is a great way to put him.
That's cool.
Yeah, I mean, you get to see the ferocity of the Sith. I mean, you've heard about them so much in the original trilogy and stuff. And
no, you don't. You don't hear about them a single time in the original trilogy.
They don't mention the Sith
They
once.
never mention the Sith one time.
Are you serious?
I am dead serious. It is an extra movie outside the movie concept that was brought into the Phantom Menace.
Really?
Yeah.
So Vader and the Emperor...
Hold on, do I have that? Every word is not... No, I don't have that one up right now. So anyway, yeah.
So Vader and the Emperor were just two bag force.
No, I think that they were in the scripts. They were talked about as being Sith and things like that, but it was never mentioned a single time.
Oh, that's why in like the Heir to Empire, it was just Dark Jedi. There wasn't Sith.
Yeah.
Huh. Well, then my whole point's gone. But basically, it was interesting. I mean, they had talked about the Sith a little bit in the beginning of the movie, right? I can't remember now. I'm totally blanking.
No, I don't remember them talking about the Sith until that moment.
Yeah, I think you're right. Well, no, because the Emperor or not the Emperor, Sidious and Maul were like, at least at last the Sith will have.
They talk about it, but the Jedi don't talk about it. Yeah.
Well, anyway, it was interesting to finally see this introduction of the Sith and see what the Sith is all about. See like why they're to be feared, like why the Jedi are so afraid of these Sith. I mean, and then like also it's just two Sith and it's causing the entire Jedi Order trouble. That's saying something.
Yeah. Well, next week we're going to continue to, with Pete Fletzer. We're going to, actually we'll talk about some other stuff with him on Hot Takes, but after that we're going to talk a little bit more about Act 2. We're going to of the Phantom Menace as we go to Coruscant, and it's going to get a whole lot more political on that. But
the next episode is going to be the fun episode.
It's interesting. It's really interesting.
It's interesting.
Yeah,
so
it's interesting.
Interesting. All right. Anything else you guys want to talk about?
Anything else?
Star Wars Rogue Squadron's story treatment is almost finished.
Oh
already.
Man, I'm ready for the script and the movie to be finished, not for the story treatment.
It's like
finished.
Well, anything.
Chris Pine from Wonder Woman actually heard fully about what the story is, and he says that he himself is very excited to see this.
I think he said something like she's taking it in a fresh direction or something like that, which could both be scary and exciting.
You want the bad news? Or the really bad news?
No, I'm excited about it.
Yeah. And then Star Wars voice actor Tom Kane, he did Yoda in the Clone Wars and
Akbar in the sequel trilogy.
Yeah,
and
he recently suffered a stroke, and he's not doing so great at the moment.
Yeah,
so.
he's having a hard time with vocabulary and some movement issues and things.
Yeah.
And his wife had mentioned it on some social media channels so people would know about it. And our prayers are definitely with Tom and his family with that. On a lighter note, very excited to see Mark Hamill be able to celebrate fandom a little bit after the last few years of some of the silliness that's gone on. And he took to Twitter and social media to thank the fans and talk about how overwhelming the response has been over his appearance, his cameo in the Mandalorian finale of season 2. And how it was really cool to read some of that stuff. So that's awesome. All right.
Yeah.
We're done.
Yeah.
With that episode.
Yay!
Yeah.
Yay!
Check out our website. Go to TatooineSons.com and you can find all this stuff. And in the show notes too. You can find all this stuff like social medias and subscribe and
shirts and stuff.
Like Porgs are friends, not food shirts and Ezra Bridger shirts and some other fun stuff.
Yeah. Boba Fett.
Some Boba Fett shirts. And
those are the coolest ones.
Yeah, some fun stuff. So check that stuff out. Have a good time on there. You can go to the show link in there, flow.page/Tatooine Sons. SONS.
Yes.
That's it. That's cool. All right, next week.
Yeah.
Pete Fletcher from Around the Galaxy.
Yeah.
This will be the first time he's on the main show. He's been on one of those interview shows that I did. 10 question type shows. And you guys have not had a chance to interact with him much. I've been on his show with it, but
Yeah.
So that tells you the level of show. I think Pete would be safe to say that he's not Coffee with Kenobi when it comes to his intelligence. No, I'm just kidding.
Wow, Dad.
No, Pete loves
He's not going to want to show up now.
No,
He's
Pete,
like, can we
Pete's actually a really
reschedule?
smart guy. No, Pete's he knows I'm joking. So Yeah,
Let's hope.
I'm joking, Pete. You know that. I only pick on people I like. Ask my kids. Okay. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to them. Let them say anything they want to say.
Yeah. Thank you for listening to the show. Thank you for getting all the way to this point, and I hope you enjoyed it. It was fun having Dan Zehr.
Yeah,
I had a problem with that during the practice. I kept calling him Dan Zehr. I don't know why, but it was great to have him on. It was great to talk, and so I just thank you for. He's probably the one that allowed you to get through the show. You know, you're like, I'll just finish it.
I've already listened to Dan. I might as well finish the show.
It's all downhill from this point,
that
right?
Is for sure true. So.
Yeah, no, thank y'all for sticking around this long, and listening to our crazy opinions and thoughts about the Phantom Menace, and thanks for Dan Z again for his amazing insights on this new era and this new content we're going to be getting. I mean, I'm more excited because of it. Like this is going to be such a fun time for Star Wars fans on every facet: TV shows, games, books, all of it. So thank y'all so much.
Yeah, thank you guys for listening. Thank you for tuning in. Share this with your friends. Comment and follow along on Twitter and Facebook and have some fun with us on that. Anything else you guys want to say?
May the Force be with you.
May the Force be with you.
May the Force be with you always.
This party's over.
I like that Wookiee.
Don't get technical with me.
Joy, please.
Yep, yep.